Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, November 21st, 2024, and today we are going to talk about elephant garlic's weird name, farming without livestock, and tracking sales at a farmer's market. So let's do it. Well, we are finally getting a little bit of cold here in Kentucky, which is about dang time. The peas in the field are starting to get absolutely out of control and flowering. The lettuce has been bolting. I usually joke that I am ready for the cold because I want it to kill some stuff back, and now I'm just ready for some cold because the heat is starting to complicate things. Also, the garlic is up a lot more than it normally would be at this point. I think as much because of the heat as because of the lack of hay mulch that I usually use. We used compost mulch this year, and that has me a little concerned. I've never lost garlic to a freeze before, but it being tall, we shall see when the real cold hits, which maybe December will do its job. We'll see. Okay, so the one thing that I won't probably talk about a ton on this show is livestock, but I do think they bring a lot of value to the farm and the ecology, so they will certainly come up sometimes. And in fact, I actually love what animals can bring to a farm. A farm does not feel the same without livestock. Also, I've only ever farmed with livestock around, so this has been our first year since we started farming that we don't have any livestock on our farm, which is kind of wild. I gotta be honest, I don't miss the stress of it or certain chores involved, but I absolutely do miss the vitality. The reasons we don't have livestock right now are pretty much just practical. When we moved from our last farm in 2020, we sold our sheep, around 20 of them, I think, at the time, because we simply don't have enough space for sheep on this farm. We rotationally grazed our sheep on that farm through 8 or 9 acres of really, really great pasture. And there's only maybe like an acre and a half here of grazable land that isn't gardens on this new farm. It was never really profitable either. You really need around 100 head to start getting profitable with sheep, but we were getting close. We found a way to generate some reasonable income selling starter flocks and then training folks on how to rotate them. However, we kept the chickens when we moved, and that worked out for a couple of years. But a neighbor's dogs got out and killed every one of them last year, which was not great. And it left us at a crossroads. We could either get more chickens and risk another massacre, or wait until we have time to really do chickens right and lock the fencing down and keep limber, athletic, unwanted animals who can jump 5-foot tall electric fences out. But as I'm planning and planting out our orchard area, I see so much potential for working chickens back into that space and back into the gardens on a rotation, and then into our compost piles for their manuring and shredding abilities. Ironically here, I should say that chickens are my least favorite livestock in terms of management. They don't herd like ducks or sheep. They scatter, so controlling them or getting them back into the fence can be a bit of a pain, not gonna lie. They also require a lot of feed, which adds a lot to the costs. They are like treats to wildlife, which makes them both expensive and hard to protect. The sheep, by contrast, ate grass for almost the entire year, and then we supplemented that with hay in the winter. Oftentimes, we're not saving much, if anything, on the price of eggs by raising our own when you factor in the labor and feed involved, plus the cost of starting out with chickens. You start to see how a $6 a dozen doesn't seem like all that unreasonable. Kind of seems like a steal, honestly. However, the benefits of having chickens does make that cost a little easier to swallow. One, ain't nothing like the taste of a fresh pasture-raised egg. Just no comparison. There is truly no way to put a price on that. We're so accustomed to cheap eggs in this country, but the nutrition and quality of a chicken raised on grass is just extraordinary. 2, the fertility from chickens can be amazing. Obviously, in high concentrations, it can also be a pollutant, but when used right, can really enhance a compost pile and a garden. And 3, you can use them in areas where you used hay to help reduce the weed seed populations from the hay. Like I said, of all the livestock options out there, I like managing chickens the least, and yet they are always the first animal I think of when I think this place needs a little livestock again. They're like a farm parasite. They are sort of hard to get rid of. I'm not saying we're going to get chickens again anytime soon, or that anyone necessarily should, but it is certainly on my mind for helping to manage and fertilize and frankly keep the orchards refreshed and enlivened going forward. Cover crops will help, but there is just nothing like an animal to do that work, even annoying ones like chickens. And if I had space, I probably would reconsider the sheep as well, because having them graze down cover crops was awesome. The other real challenge with livestock is that it absolutely locks you down. Unlike a dog or a cat, as a pet, it's not always easy to have someone come over and feed and water livestock. When we would go away on trips or vacations, it was like we needed to have a half-day training session to have someone manage the livestock for a week. This was especially true when we had sheep. So although looking at the orchards and other areas of our farm that could use animals, we're still a ways away from getting livestock again. But it's true what they say. Farms don't feel quite the same without animals. And also, distance makes the heart grow fonder, for better or worse. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll get a question from a Patreon member, BRB. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seeding to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. Their same-day shipping can help keep your planting schedules on track when the unexpected happens. They're here to help you grow good food. Turning to Johnny's means you can plant high-quality, trial-proven varieties with confidence and know that their expert staff is ready to help with first-hand knowledge, because they've grown them themselves. Learn more at johnnyseeds.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast and want to show some support, you can do so over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. Does this show bring $2 or $5 worth of value per month to you? Consider signing up. I will try to get to questions from everywhere as much as I can, but I will always get to those Patreon questions. Today's question comes from Patreon member Paul Lukens, who writes, quote, I would love to hear how you and others track sales at farmers markets. There are two obvious ways to do this. Count your inventory in advance and count what's left when you come back from market, or track individual items sold as you go at market, what Paul says they currently do. Downsides of the former that I see are twofold. One, extra time spent, and two, differences in how you bring veg to market and how you end up packaging it, i.e. we sell bell peppers in quarts, but bring them loose in a tote. The latter, which is what we have done for years, works great at slower markets, but when there's a flurry of customers, sometimes we end up with more cash in the till than we have tick marks on our sales sheet. Maybe there's a magical third option here that has none of these problems? End quote. Okay, great question, Paul, especially since we sort of covered farmers markets a bit in yesterday's third segment. So it's a nice compliment to that. Appreciate that. Now, I'll start by saying that we've almost always used the first option of counting what we send and then comparing it to what we bring home. For organic certification, because you have to track your sales to show that you're not, for instance, selling more than you're growing, i.e. buying non-organic produce and selling it as organic, for an example, this method was just easier for us. So to use your example of peppers, we would, for instance, weigh the basket or tote, place them in pints at market, and then re-weigh the basket or tote when we got home. That way, we knew exactly how many pounds we sold, even if the units we sold at market weren't exactly a pound or a half pound or whatever. There was a time when we first started that we were doing mostly a CSA drop-off at the farmer's market and then selling extra produce on the front table that we could track individual units, but that's very hard to do when it's busy. The idea of slowing a line of customers down to track my inventory doesn't sit well with me. Customers should be served first and fast. Seeing a long line with customers leaving from the back is a sight that's still a year out from my last farmer's market. Gives me nightmares. Customers will attach a feeling to the experience of buying food from you. If it's always a chore, it will be harder for them to retain them as customers. Now, there is a third option, which would be to get a POS system, a point of sale system, that tracks individual items. That way you can ring up exactly what a customer bought. That will spit out a total, and at the end of the day, it will give you the exact totals of what you've sold. You would still have to compare that to what you brought, but it could be helpful down the line to see exactly how much you sold of what. I believe that Square and all the rest offer this sort of option, and you would just have to take the time to build it out. On the one hand, that would be a lot of work, but on the other hand, you would get a much more detailed list of what you sold, and you could even have a more complicated pricing structure because the computer would be doing the work for you. However, it would also potentially slow the line down. So like everything in the world, there are positives and negatives to it. And to be sure, I've never used a system that itemized automatically like that. It just never seemed totally necessary for me. One thing I think is really important in tracking sales, though, is to note what you could have sold more of, which doesn't always show up in itemized totals. Like if you took 50 bunches of carrots and sold 48, you may think, oh, I should plan for that same amount of carrots next time, not remembering that you actually sold all 48 in the first hour, but those last 2 bunches just looked really rough, so no one bought them. Or maybe they were forgotten at the bottom of the cooler or something, but you really could have sold another 50 carrot bunches without trouble. You won't remember those little nuances in 4 or 5 months when you start your garden planning, so it's good to make note of them. All that to say, it's just good to make notes above and beyond just what sold and what didn't. Like maybe people are asking for radishes in June, and they will be because that's usually when salad season starts after the salad stuff is harder to grow. It's good to know that now while you're planning, but like I said, that's not always going to show up in just raw numbers. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Thanks as always for all the great questions, Patreon members. You have kept this content train full, so I appreciate you. If you're dying to get your question answered, please head over to patreon.com/no-till-growers and sign up. Otherwise, up next, elephant garlic. Or is it? Be right back. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Farmhand. I don't know about you, but I got into farming to be in the field growing food for my community, not creating elaborate pack lists, not writing newsletters or responding to emails, not designing and maintaining web stores, and etc. And I especially don't enjoy doing those things after an already full and fulfilling day of growing food. Actually, if I spent less time on my phone and behind the computer, that would be great. If only there were a solution for that. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand is the only all-in-one virtual assistant built by and for farmers. With one single platform, Farmhand enables you to offload your administrative tasks, send and manage communications, and sell more to your customers. Farmhand saves growers an average of 6 hours of administrative load each week. That's 6 hours so you can get back into the field, spend more time with friends or family, or have a life outside of the farm, which is actually a thing. Think about it. What would you do with an extra 6 hours a week? Sign up for a free trial with the link in the show notes because now is the best time to dial in those systems for the next growing season. Follow the Farmhand link in the show notes to learn more. All right, back to the show. Okay, so I guess I had mentioned elephant garlic in the episode I did on mulching garlic, and there were a couple of comments on that episode that were basically like, isn't elephant garlic in the leek family? And while technically, yes, this is true, it may also be completely wrong. First, I'm going to practice a little Latin. I was in Latin club when I was in high school, so naturally I should rule at this, but I won't, I promise. Anyway, elephant garlic is classified as Allium ampiloprosum, like leeks. Garlic, for its part, is classified as Allium sativum. They are all in the same family, Amaryllidaceae, nailed it. Just leeks and elephant garlic share a species, Ampiloprosum. That's the scientific classification stuff, and it basically says that elephant garlic is more closely related to leeks than garlic. But several years ago, a commenter named at Bill Astle 3753, what's up, Bill, pointed out that this was probably a case of wrong classification and that many botanical classifications are just incorrect. And indeed, species are being renamed all the time because they were improperly named to begin with. There is a whole messy history with botanical classification, so this was not surprising to me, but I did look around to see if I could find any additional insight on this, and, well, turns out there was a study done on one variety of elephant garlic in Italy that did a chemical evaluation and comparison and found, quote, a higher proximity of elephant garlic to garlic rather than leek, at least for the specimen analyzed in the study. So this does not say that every elephant garlic is actually a garlic, but it does give us an example of where this one elephant garlic is more closely related to garlic than it is to leeks. This, for anyone who has grown elephant garlic, makes sense because it certainly grows more similarly to garlic than it does to leeks. In fact, nothing about the way leeks perform beyond a slight resemblance in the plant, like they are all alliums, tells me that this would be the case either, so I'm not surprised. But again, sense does not make science, so it's nice to have at least one small study to back up this idea that elephant garlic isn't more closely related to a leek, it is actually just garlic. Womp womp. Now, I love elephant garlic, but less for the bulk than the allium it produces, like the allium flower. It is this cool kind of bulbous purple allium that we would sell at farmers markets for like $1 a stem. Then we harvest the bulbs and sell those as well. We probably do lose a little or maybe a lot of yield by keeping the allium on because you're supposed to pop your scapes and the allium is a scape. But we have two valuable crops off of one, making each of those bulbs worth over $5, which is a good price for garlic and honestly a bit on the low end for something as valuable and enormous as elephant garlic. And the funny thing is that we don't sell flowers generally. We would sell the alliums as edible flowers or just in bunches. They look like some sort of weird mid-century art piece. I would also tell people that these would be the last flower you'd ever have to buy because you can dry them out and keep them all winter. Love that stuff. The elephant garlic that we grow, at least, is a bit trickier in the kitchen than other garlics, so we always had to be on our toes when folks were shopping for it. It's a bit more bitter compared to other garlics. Its real value, or at least its nostalgic value to me, as somebody who cooked a lot in a French kitchen, is in roasting it with herbs and spreading it on bread, or just pureeing and roasting cloves and adding that to a dish. Delicious stuff, but a little too intense to add to just most average dishes. Like, you don't want to shave some elephant garlic into your pasta, or I don't. Anyway, that's it for Thursday. We will be back tomorrow for Feedback Friday. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and to the team at No Till Growers for their support. If you like this work and want even more of it, you can pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at no-tillgrowers.com or pre-order a copy of Dan Brisebois' book, The Seed Farmer, which drops next week. You can do that at No Till Growers as well. The Living Soil Handbook is also notably available in other countries wherever books are sold. It is in French and English, but soon German and Italian. I will link all of those in the show notes so you can find them. Another really awesome way to support us, sign up over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or if you just sign up in the month of November, you get a shout out in the show. So big shout outs today to, another solo, Casey Anderson. All right, Casey, your name is giving me like, have I done I feel like this has got kind of a private eye, but like in Appalachia. So Casey Anderson, Appalachian Private Eye. Maybe like a bit film noir vibe to it, but with like some banjos. This could be awesome. Great work, Casey. Thanks for the support. If you would like your own novel at the end of one of these episodes, clearly I can't help myself, go over to patreon.com/no-tillgrowers and sign up today. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.